It started as a simple picnic. Laughter, wine, the warmth of the sun. But one cruel joke from my wife changed everything. And when her best friend cut through the laughter with a single sentence, the silence that followed cracked my entire marriage. That was the moment everything began to unravel, and the moment I realized I wasn't invisible to everyone. It began on the kind of afternoon that fools you into believing nothing bad could ever happen. The air was heavy with warmth. Laughter rippled across the field, and I remember thinking how ordinary it all felt. A blanket was stretched on the grass, bottles of wine already half empty, sandwiches pulled apart and abandoned mid-conversation. I should have felt content. I should have felt at ease among friends. Instead, there was always a tension that lived just beneath my skin, one that came alive every time my wife opened her mouth at my expense. It wasn't new. It was never new. She had a habit of making jokes that cut a little too deep, smirks that left me raw while everyone else laughed. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. Don't make it bigger than it is. She would say, "You're too sensitive." Maybe I was. Maybe I just wasn't strong enough to shrug it off the way she wanted. But that day, that picnic, it was different. She leaned back on her elbows, the sun catching her hair, her smile sharp as a blade. I should have known by the look in her eye. "Well," she said, loud enough for every ear around the blanket to hear, "at least you all know I don't keep him for his skills in bed. He's just nothing there." For a heartbeat, silence, then laughter, a roar of it, some polite, some hesitant, some genuine. It washed over me like acid. I managed a smile. I had become good at that, the practice mask, the way my lips could lift while everything inside me turned to stone. But then, "You're wrong," came another voice, sharper, firmer. "He's not nothing. He's just nothing to you." The world seemed to freeze. Even the birds above us fell quiet. It was her, my wife's best friend, the one who usually smoothed things over, who played the role of diplomat, who knew how to calm storms instead of stirring them. She was leaning forward now, eyes locked on my wife, her voice steady and deliberate. My wife blinked, her face tightening. "W, what do you mean by that?" "Exactly what I said," her friend replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "Maybe if you stopped mocking him, you'd actually see him." Heat flooded my face. Not from shame, not anymore. Something else, something dangerous. Around us, the laughter had died. The group shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting with glasses, picking at crumbs on the blanket. My wife's face had gone red, the smirk gone, replaced by a tightness around her mouth. I sat perfectly still, my storm carefully hidden behind a mask of calm. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. Someone else had done it for me, and that, more than anything, was what shook me. For years, I had waited. For years, I had wanted her to stop, to recognize what her words did to me. And now, in front of everyone, someone else had seen it. Someone else had said it. The rest of the picnic passed in a haze. Conversation limped along, broken, unnatural. My wife laughed too loudly at things that weren't funny, her eyes darting toward me, toward her friend, as though searching for reassurance that the world hadn't shifted beneath her feet. But it had. By the time we packed up the blanket and shook the crumbs from the corners, I knew something irreversible had happened. A crack had opened, one that couldn't be plastered over by excuses or apologies. That night, long after the dishes were done and my wife had gone to bed in a storm of false cheer, I sat in the dim light of the living room, replaying the moment in my head. The sound of her friend's voice, the sharpness of her words, the way silence had descended like judgment. I thought of the look in her eyes, the faint smile, the certainty. And then my phone buzzed. A message from her. "I'm sorry for saying that in front of everyone, but you deserve better." I read it once, twice, 10 times. My pulse quickened with each read, my hand tight around the phone. Better. Better than what? Better than my wife? Better than the life I had been living? I stared at the screen, the words burning into me. For the first time in years, I felt something stir, something I had buried under patience, silence, and endurance. It felt dangerous. It felt alive. I didn't reply right away. Her text sat on my phone like a live wire, glowing on the darkened screen. "I'm sorry for saying that in front of everyone, but you deserve better." Better. That word kept repeating in my mind, as if it carried something heavier than its simple letters. I set the phone down, picked it back up, typed half a response, then erased it. The clock crept past midnight. My wife was asleep in the bedroom, one hand flung across the sheets, as if even in dreams she needed space from me. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, sat in the dim glow of the lamp, and stared at the phone again. My chest was tight, my hands restless. Why did her words matter so much? Why did they cut deeper than years of my wife's barbs? Finally, I typed, "Don't apologize. You just said what no one else ever dared to say." I stared at the message, thumb hovering, then sent it. Seconds stretched. A minute passed. Then two. My pulse raced as though I just confessed something forbidden. The phone buzzed. Maybe, but I shouldn't have said it in front of everyone. I just couldn't stand how she laughed. How they all laughed. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. You did nothing wrong. You defended me. No one's ever done that before. Another pause. Then her reply. That's exactly the problem. I leaned back in my chair, staring at those words until they blurred. She wasn't wrong. My silence over the years had allowed it, and now here was someone, her best friend, of all people, forcing me to face it. Before I could reply, another message came. I know it sounds bold, but you let her treat you like that too often. You act like it doesn't hurt, but I've seen your face. It hurts. My chest tightened. She saw me. Not the mask, not the practice smile, me. It does, I admitted, fingers shaking as I typed. But what's the point of fighting when she'll just tell me I'm imagining it? The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Finally, the point is, you deserve respect. At the very least, respect. Respect. Such a simple word. Yet it hit me harder than anything else that night. We kept talking. The minutes bled into hours. About marriage. About the way humor can cross a line. About silence and endurance. She told me how often she'd bitten her tongue at my wife's remarks. How many times she wanted to step in but didn't. Until today. At some point, I realized I was smiling. Not the forced kind, not the polite mask. A real smile. The kind I hadn't felt in too long. "Are you still awake?" she asked. "Yes," I typed. "I shouldn't keep you up." "I don't mind. It feels good talking to you." There was a long pause. My heart pounded. Then, "It feels good for me too." I set the phone down for a moment and rubbed my temples. The room felt warmer. A dangerous kind of warmth. The days that followed carried a strange electricity. Outwardly, life continued. Work, chores, dinners that were quiet except for the television filling the silence. My wife carried on as though nothing had happened, though I caught her watching me sometimes, a flicker of unease in her eyes. But beneath it all was a hidden thread between me and her friend. Messages at odd hours. Conversations that slipped deeper than small talk. She asked about my dreams once, and it stopped me cold. My wife hadn't asked me that in years. Late one night, after a long back and forth about relationships, she wrote, "She doesn't see you. She thinks mocking is intimacy, but it's not. It's cruelty dressed as humor." I stared at that for a long time. My wife stirred in the bedroom, mumbling in her sleep. I felt a surge of something hot, restless. "You see me," I typed back. Her response came slowly, carefully. "Yes, I do." The first time we spoke on the phone, I wasn't expecting it. My phone lit up past midnight. Her name on the screen. My hands trembled as I answered. "Hello." My voice was a whisper, as if I were already guilty. "Sorry," she said softly. I couldn't sleep." Her voice. I had always known in the context of group gatherings. Friendly chatter, laughter over glasses of wine. But alone, in the quiet dark, her voice felt different. Intimate, like it was reaching into me. We talked for an hour. About small things at first, then deeper. She asked me what I wanted out of life. I admitted I didn't know anymore. She laughed gently, not mockingly, but in a way that made me want to answer better next time. When we hung up, the silence in the room felt unbearable. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her voice replaying in my head. By the end of that week, a rhythm had formed. My wife would go to bed early, exhausted from her own routines, and I would stay up, phone in hand, waiting. Sometimes it was a message, sometimes a call. Always her presence filling a void I hadn't even realized had grown so wide. One night, she said something that shook me. "Do you ever imagine what your life would be like if you were with someone who treated you differently?" The air in my lungs caught. Yes, I admitted. I imagine it all the time. The silence stretched on the line. Then her quiet reply, "Me too." I lay there long after we hung up, staring into the dark. My wife was asleep beside me, her breathing steady, oblivious. and yet all I could feel was the ghost of another woman's words brushing against me like fingertips. Something had begun, and I knew there would be no turning back. There's a strange kind of danger in words. Not the ones shouted in anger or spoken in cruelty. Those are obvious, easy to recognize. The real danger is in the gentle ones, whispered late at night, words that slip past your defenses and settle where no one else has ever reached. That was what she became to me, a voice in the dark, an anchor when I didn't even know I was drifting. It started as messages, always cautious at first, always under the shield of friendship. She asked me how my day went, and I answered more honestly than I ever did with my wife. She noticed small things, the way I phrased sentences, the pauses in my replies. It felt like she could read between the lines. And then there were the late-night calls. They became a habit, almost a ritual. My wife would turn in early, claiming headaches, scroll her phone until she passed out beside me. I'd wait until her breathing evened, then slip quietly into the living room with my own phone in hand, heart thudding with excitement I tried not to name. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked one night. "No," I admitted. I keep thinking," she said softly, "about things I probably shouldn't." That answer left me restless. "What kind of things?" She hesitated, then laughed, a small, nervous laugh. Nothing dangerous, just about life, about how different things would be if people made different choices. "Like who?" I pushed, needing her to be clearer. "Like you, like me." Her voice wrapped around me, warm and intimate. I leaned back into the couch, letting it wash over me. The house was silent, the only light the dim glow of the lamp. I could almost imagine she was sitting across from me, her legs tucked beneath her, wine glass in hand. "You know," she said after a pause, "you're easy to talk to. I don't feel judged with you." "Maybe because I'm the one who's always judged," I said, half a joke, half bitter truth. She didn't laugh. "She doesn't see you, not the way you really are." The silence that followed was thick, humming with something unspoken. My pulse quickened. In the days that followed, I found myself checking my phone constantly. At work, in traffic, during dinner. Every time her name lit up my screen, I felt alive. It wasn't just attraction, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't think of her in ways I shouldn't. It was deeper. She saw me. One evening, we met by accident. My wife had invited her over for coffee, unaware of the secret life unfolding between us. I sat at the kitchen table, pretending to read the news on my tablet. When she walked in, her eyes found mine instantly. A flicker of recognition passed between us, invisible to my wife, who was bustling about the counter. She smiled politely, but there was a softness there, a secret acknowledgement of all the nights we had shared through glowing screens and whispered calls. When she reached for a cup, her hand brushed mine, just the faintest contact, enough to send a jolt through me. I froze, pulse hammering, as though my wife could see the spark between us. But she didn't. She never noticed. Our eyes met for half a second longer than they should have. Then she looked away, sipping her coffee as if nothing had happened. That night, she texted, "I shouldn't have touched you." "It was nothing," I replied, though my body knew better. "It didn't feel like nothing," she wrote back. I set the phone down, unable to breathe for a moment. As the weeks passed, the intimacy deepened. She told me about her own loneliness, how even though she wasn't married, she often felt unseen. She admitted she envied the closeness people pretended to have, even if it was false. "It's not just sex people need," she told me one night. "It's being noticed, being wanted." Her words struck deep. I wanted to tell her I noticed her. The way she brushed her hair behind her ear, the way her laugh softened when it was just us, the way she looked at me like I wasn't invisible. Instead, I said, "I know exactly what you mean." There was a long silence, and then she whispered, "Sometimes I wish things were different." I didn't ask her to explain. I didn't need to. One night, after another of those conversations, I found myself lying awake beside my wife, staring at the ceiling. She was turned away from me, snoring lightly. My phone rested on my chest, her last message glowing in the dark. "If she doesn't want to see you, maybe someone else should." I didn't know if she meant herself, or just anyone in the world who wasn't my wife, but the possibility burned inside me. I closed my eyes, imagining her face, the softness of her lips, the warmth of her voice. I imagined what it would feel like to sit closer, to touch her hand and not pull away, to let all the restraint crumble. The images left me restless, heat pooling low in my stomach. It had been so long since I felt that kind of hunger, not just for sex, but for intimacy, for connection. For the first time, I wondered if what was happening between us was no longer just emotional. For the first time, I realized I wanted more. It's strange how quickly the forbidden can become ordinary. A few weeks earlier, the thought of speaking to her in secret would have seemed impossible. Now it was the part of my day I looked forward to most. My wife's laughter, her endless commentary, even the weight of our shared history. None of it filmed away a single late-night text from her best friend did. I knew it was dangerous. She was hers, the one person closest to my wife, the woman who had been in our home countless times, who had toasted our anniversaries, who had been a fixture in our marriage from the very beginning. And yet, every message, every call, pulled me closer to a line I swore I would never cross. The first time I saw her after our kitchen encounter, I could feel the shift between us like static in the air. We were at another small gathering, not as big as a picnic, just a few friends around the fire pit in someone's backyard. The crackle of flames, the murmur of voices, the faint smell of smoke in the air. My wife was busy telling some story about work, hands flying in animated gestures, all eyes on her. But mine weren't. She sat across from me, her legs crossed, the firelight painting gold along her cheekbones. She caught me looking, didn't look away. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, more like a secret. The conversation swirled around us, but all I heard was the pounding of my own heart. It felt reckless, even dangerous, to hold her gaze for so long. Yet neither of us looked away until my wife laughed and broke the spell. Later, when I checked my phone on the table, there it was, a single message from her. "I saw you watching me." My breath caught. I typed back quickly, hiding the phone against my leg. You didn't look away either. The dots blinked on my screen. Then, maybe I didn't want to, I tucked the phone away, pulse hammering. For the rest of the night, I barely heard a word anyone said. Our messages grew bolder after that. Less careful, more daring. She would tell me when she was thinking about me, not just as a friend, but as a man. She never said it outright, but it was there, threaded through her words. "You're easy to want," she wrote once, late at night. "Want how?" I asked, though I knew. Her reply came after a long pause. "The way a woman wants a man." I sat there, staring at the screen, my body tense, my mind on fire. My wife was asleep in the bedroom. I imagined telling her then and there, imagine the chaos it would unleash. But instead, I just typed back, "You shouldn't say that." "Maybe not," she replied, "but it doesn't make it less true." The next time she came over, I felt the weight of it. She arrived with her usual smile, carrying a bottle of wine. My wife greeted her warmly, oblivious to the undercurrent humming between us. I poured drinks, tried to keep my hand steady. When I handed her a glass, our fingers brushed again. This time, she didn't pull away immediately. Just a moment, one heartbeat too long. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and something unspoken passed between us. The rest of the evening was torture. They talked, laughed, gossiped, while I sat trapped in my own head, replaying that tiny moment over and over. I barely spoke, afraid the tremor in my voice would give me away. When she left, she lingered at the door just a second longer than necessary. Her eyes met mine again, and the message was clear. We both feel this. That night, as soon as my wife fell asleep, my phone lit up. "I can still feel your hand." I swallowed hard, fingers trembling as I typed. "So can I." Her reply came instantly. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend." I closed my eyes, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Pretend. That was what we were doing. Pretending this was harmless. Pretending we were just friends. But the truth was breaking through the cracks. Undeniable now. It was worse, or better, when we found ourselves alone. One Saturday, my wife asked me to help her friend move a few boxes from her car. We walked down the driveway together, the air heavy with unspoken tension. As we lifted a box together, our arms brushed, and I felt the heat of her body so close to mine. She looked at me then, really looked, and whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "This isn't fair, is it?" I froze, heart pounding. What isn't? That we can't be honest about what we want. The box suddenly felt weightless in my hands. I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, my thoughts tangled. She stepped back quickly, cheeks flushed, as if she revealed too much. We carried the boxes in silence, but every second felt electric. That night, her message came. "I almost kissed you today." I stared at the screen, my whole body taut with want. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed, "Why didn't you?" Her answer came with cruel simplicity. Because she was inside the house. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every nerve in my body was alive. Every thought consumed by her. It was no longer just friendship. No longer just late-night talks. A new hunger had taken root between us. Something neither of us could ignore. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before we stopped resisting. There are moments you can never take back. Moments that slip past the safety of excuses and plunge you into dangerous clarity. I knew one was coming. I could feel in the way she looked at me, in the way her words had shifted from careful to reckless. All that remained was when. It happened on an evening that was supposed to be ordinary. My wife had invited her friend over again, this time for dinner. I cooked while they drank wine at the counter, their laughter echoing through the kitchen. I should have felt like part of it, but I didn't. I felt like I was on the edge of something far larger, something invisible only to her. We ate. We talked. My wife told the story of the picnic again, glossing over the embarrassing ending, twisting it into a harmless anecdote about teasing me in public. I laughed at the right moments, but when I caught her friend's eyes across the table, I saw the truth there. She wasn't laughing. She hadn't forgotten. After dinner, my wife excused herself to take a call. That left us clearing the place together in the quiet kitchen. She brushed past me as she reached for the dishes, the faint scent of her perfume wrapping around me. "Thanks for cooking," she said softly. Her voice meant only for me. "Thanks for noticing," I replied before I could stop myself. She froze for half a second, eyes flicking to mine. Then she smiled, small but real. We worked side by side in silence after that, but the air was thick with something unsaid. When she bent to pick up a dropped fork, she rose too close. Our shoulders touched, and neither of us moved away. For a breathless moment we stood there, side by side, bodies aligned. I could feel the heat of her against me, the rhythm of her breathing. "Careful," she whispered, though I didn't know if she meant the fork or us. I didn't answer. My throat was dry, my pulse hammering. I forced myself to step aside, but the damage was done. My body knew what my mind had been trying to deny. Later that week, we found ourselves alone again. My wife had run late at work, and her friend had dropped by to return a borrowed book. I opened the door, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension from the kitchen still lingered between us, raw and unresolved. "Is she here?" she asked. "No, just me." Her eyes held mine longer than they should have. I shouldn't stay. But she did. She walked past me into the living room, moving slowly, as though daring me to stop her. I closed the door behind her, my palms sweating. We talked, at first, casual things, but every word was heavy, every pause loaded. I noticed the way her knee brushed mine when she sat on the couch. I noticed that she didn't move away. At one point, she leaned forward to set her glass down, and her hand landed lightly on my thigh for balance. Just a second, just a touch, but it burned through me like fire. She must have felt it too, because when she pulled her hand back, her cheeks flushed. "Sorry," she murmured. "Don't be," I said, my voice lower than I intended. The silence that followed was unbearable. She looked at me, lips parted as though she wanted to speak, but couldn't. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might shake the air between us. And then she leaned closer. Not much, just enough for her hair to brush my shoulder, for her breath to graze my cheek. My instinct screamed to close the distance, to take what I wanted, but fear rooted me to the spot. A car door slammed outside. My wife's voice carried through the entryway. The spell shattered. We shot apart like guilty teenagers. By the time my wife walked in, we were on opposite ends of the couch, glasses in hand, masks firmly back in place. But the damage was done. That night, my phone buzzed as soon as my wife fell asleep. "I almost kissed you." I stared at the message, my whole body tense with need. My thumbs hovered before I typed. "I wanted you to." There was a long pause. I thought maybe she wouldn't reply. Then, finally, "Next time, I don't think I'll stop." I didn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt her hand on my thigh, her breath on my skin. The hunger inside me had broken loose, and there was no pushing it back down. The next days were torture. At breakfast, my wife chatted as though nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek absent-mindedly before work, scrolled through her phone while we ate dinner, made plans with friends. She was oblivious, but I wasn't. Every ordinary moment felt like betrayal now, not because of what I had done, but because of what I hadn't done yet. I found myself staring at the door when I knew her friend might come by. my body tense with anticipation. I checked my phone constantly, waiting for messages that sent my pulse racing. And at night, lie beside my wife, I thought of someone else's lips, someone else's hands. I knew it was only a matter of time. We were standing on the edge of something we couldn't come back from, and I wanted to fall. It was a Thursday night when the line finally began to blur beyond repair. My wife had gone out for drinks with co-workers, leaving me alone with a half-cooked dinner and silence pressing against the walls. I told myself I'd watch something on TV, maybe finish a book, anything to keep my mind from wandering to the woman who had been haunting it nightly. But of course my phone buzzed. "Are you busy?" Her name glowed on the screen like temptation itself. "No, just home. You?" I typed back, already knowing I wouldn't resist whatever came next. Same. Too much wine. Needed to hear a voice that doesn't make me feel empty. My throat tightened. I stared at the message, then hit call before I could overthink it. She answered on the second ring, her voice soft, the faintest slur of alcohol behind it. "Hey! Hey!" I whispered, though I was alone. For a while, we talked about nothing. Work, friends, the small inconveniences of the day. But beneath it all was a steady drumbeat of something heavier, something waiting to break free. I could hear it in the way her voice dropped when she said my name, in the pauses that lingered just a second too long. "You sound tired," I told her. "I am. Tired of a lot of things." "Like what?" She went quiet for a long moment, then almost too softly to hear. "Like watching you live a life where you're not seen." The words hit me like a blow. I sat back on the couch, heart hammering. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I know," she said, a humorless laugh in her throat. "But it's true." Silence again, the kind that hums with danger. Finally, I said, "What if I like hearing it?" I could hear her inhale sharply. Then, with trembling honesty, "Then I'll say it again. She doesn't see you, but I do." My chest tightened, heat rushing through me. "You can't know that." "I do. I see the way you hold back, the way you laugh politely when she mocks you, the way your shoulders tense when you think no one notices. I see the man she ignores, and he deserves more than she'll ever give him." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone until my knuckles whitened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I can't keep it in anymore." Her voice cracked. "Because every time I look at you, I think about how much I want to take her place." The words sucked the air from my lungs. My entire body went hot, restless, alive. "You don't mean that," I whispered, though I wanted her to mean it more than anything. "I do," she insisted. "God, I do. I think about it all the time. About you. About what it would feel like if you were mine instead of hers." The silence after that was unbearable. My pulse thundered in my ears, my breathing uneven. I wanted to say something, anything, but words tangled on my tongue. She filled the gap, her voice trembling. "Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me you don't feel it too. Please, just tell me so I can stop." But I couldn't. "I feel it," I said, the confession torn from me like a secret too heavy to keep. "I've tried not to, but I can't ignore it anymore." Her exhale shuddered through the speaker, half relief, half hunger. "Say it again." "I feel it," I repeated, firmer this time. "Every time you look at me, every time you touch me, even by accident, I feel it and I can't stop." For a moment, we just breathed together, nothing but raw need filling the silence. "I shouldn't want this," she murmured. "Neither should I." And yet, I echoed, my voice rough. That night, after we hung up, I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room, replaying her words over and over. "I want to take her place." My hands shook, my chest ached with desire I hadn't felt in years. When I finally crawled into bed beside my wife, I couldn't bring myself to touch her. She rolled over in her sleep, mumbling something incoherent, her hand brushing my arm. The contact felt hollow. Wrong. Because all I could think about was someone else's voice, someone else's confession, someone else's lips that I hadn't kissed but now burned for. The line had been crossed. Not with skin, not yet, but with truth. And truth was something we could never take back. The next day, my phone lit up at noon. A single message from her. Last night was a mistake. I stared at it, my pulse racing. I typed, erased, typed again, until finally I sent back the only words I could manage. "Then what happens next?" Her reply came after a long, agonizing pause. "Next, we stop pretending." I told myself it wouldn't happen. That even after the words we'd shared, the confessions, the late-night calls, I'd find the strength to hold the line. But strength has a way of dissolving when temptation keeps showing up at your door. It was a Saturday evening when everything unraveled. My wife had gone to visit her sister, leaving me home alone. I had planned a quiet night, maybe a book, maybe a movie, but then my phone lit up. She told me she'd be out of town tonight. Are you alone? My hands trembled as I typed back. Yes. There was no hesitation in her reply. I'm coming over. I should have stopped it. I should have said no. But the truth was, I wanted this more than I'd ever admitted, maybe even to myself. By the time her car pulled into the driveway, my heart was already pounding with the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, as if acknowledging the danger we'd both chosen to embrace. She wore jeans and a simple blouse. Nothing remarkable, yet she looked like the most intoxicating thing I had ever seen. Neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, vibrating with tension. Then she crossed the room in 3 steps and kissed me. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't cautious. Her lips crashed into mine with years of suppressed hunger, and I responded instantly, pulling her closer, tasting her, devouring the thing I'd been starving for. Her hands slid into my hair, tugging, desperate, while mine roamed her back, her waist, every inch I could touch. She pressed against me, and I felt the heat of her body, the undeniable proof of what we both wanted. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, her eyes were dark, pupils wide. God, I wanted that, she whispered. So I admitted, my voice rough, trembling. We kissed again, slower this time, savoring, exploring. My hands lingered at her hips, and she didn't stop me. If anything, she pressed into me harder, as though begging me to take more. We stumbled to the couch, mouths locked, hands roaming. Every touch was a revelation. Her skin was softer than I imagined, her breath hotter, her body alive against mine. I'd forgotten what it was like to be wanted with such intensity, to feel someone trembling not with reluctance, but with need. Her lips trailed to my neck, and I groaned, unable to hold it in. We shouldn't, I whispered, though my hands betrayed me, sliding beneath her blouse. I know, she breathed, kissing me harder, but I don't care. Her blouse came off. Mine followed. Skin to skin, the heat was unbearable. Every brush of her body against mine left me shaking. It wasn't just sex we were reaching for. It was affirmation, validation, a desperate need to be seen and desired. Every kiss screamed it. Every gasp proved it. At one point she pulled back, her hand on my chest, her breathing ragged. Do you feel guilty? She asked. Yes, I said honestly. Me too. We stared at each other, sweat on our skin, hearts racing. Then she smiled faintly, almost sad. But I feel alive too. I kissed her again, deeper than before, and in that moment, guilt didn't matter. The night blurred after that. Clothes abandoned, whispers filling the spaces where silence had lived too long. She was everything my wife wasn't, attentive, hungry, unashamed. Every movement, every sigh, every shiver told me I mattered, that I was wanted, that I wasn't invisible. And when it was over, when we lay tangled on the couch, her head on my chest, the world felt quieter than it had in years. This is wrong, I said finally, staring at the ceiling. I know, she whispered, but I don't regret it. Neither did I. She left before dawn, slipping out with one last kiss that lingered on my lips long after she was gone. I sat alone in the living room, the smell of her perfume still on my skin, the weight of what we'd done pressing down. There was no going back now. We had crossed the line, and I knew I would cross it again. The morning after was a blur. My wife came home from her sister's with bags of groceries and chatter about family gossip, completely unaware of what had happened in her absence. I stood there in the kitchen, nodding, smiling, carrying bags from her trunk, all while the ghost of another woman's lips still burned against mine. It felt surreal. My wife's voice was background noise, like a radio in another room, while my body still hummed with memories of the night before. Every time I lifted something heavy, I remembered the way her hands had gripped me. Every time my wife brushed past me, I remembered the way her friend's skin had pressed against mine. I had betrayed her, and yet I felt more alive than I had in years. The messages started almost immediately. Are you okay? She wrote the next day. Not really, I replied, but I don't regret it. Neither do I. I can't stop thinking about you. Those words were a spark on dry grass. The more we talked, The hungrier we became. It wasn't enough to have kissed, to have touched, to have crossed the line once. Now the line was gone, erased, and all that remained was a question of when we could fall into each other again. It turned into a rhythm, a dangerous one. My wife would go to bed early, and I'd slip into the living room with my phone, waiting for her friend's call. Her voice became my nightly drug, the sound of her laughter, the sighs that betrayed her longing. We met in stolen moments. A coffee shop on the edge of town. A long walk where we strayed from the path. Once, in her car, parked under the shadow of trees, where we kissed until the windows fogged. Each meeting was a secret etched into my skin, a memory that made everything else feel muted and pale. The fear was constant, though. Every time my phone buzzed, I worried my wife would see. Every glance she threw me at the dinner table felt loaded, though in reality, she was oblivious. One night, after a particularly long call, I asked a friend, "Don't you worry she'll find out?" Her reply was immediate. "All the time, but I still can't stop." Neither can I. We sat in silence, breathing together through the phone, the weight of our choices pressing down even as desire kept pushing us forward. The sex became inevitable. It happened again a week later, when my wife left for a weekend retreat with co-workers. Her friend dropped by to check in on me, though we both knew what that meant. The moment the door shut behind her, we were on each other, lips bruising, hands desperate, pulling, tugging, kneading. This time there was no hesitation, no guilty pause. We made it to the bedroom, the one I shared with my wife, and for the first time in years, that bed felt alive. She whispered my name like a prayer. I kissed her like I was starving. Every movement, every sound, every touch carried the weight of years I'd spent ignored, mocked, diminished. In her arms, I wasn't invisible. I was wanted. I was seen. Afterward, she lay sprawled against me, her hair a mess across the pillow, her fingers drawing lazy circles on my chest. "This is insane," she murmured. "I know. We can't keep doing this." But her lips were already trailing down my neck again, and I knew we would. We became experts at the double life. At dinners with friends, she and I barely looked at each other, though I could feel her gaze burning against my skin. At parties, we laughed at different jokes, sat opposite ends of the table, never lingering too close. To anyone else, nothing had changed. But beneath the surface, our bodies told a different story. Every brush of her hand when passing me a glass, every second of eye contact that lasted too long, every smile that curved when no one else was watching, they were confessions in themselves. At night, when my wife lay beside me scrolling her phone, I would sneak a glance at the messages lighting up mine. "I miss you. I can still taste you. When can I have you again?" My wife never noticed. Or maybe she didn't want to, but secrets are heavy things. And the more we indulged, the heavier it became. One evening, after another fevered encounter, she sat on the edge of the bed, her back to me, her shoulders tense. "How long do you think we can keep this up?" I sat behind her, brushing her hair away from her neck, pressing a kiss against her skin. "As long as we want." She shook her head. "That's not true. Secrets always come out. And when this one does..." She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. I didn't answer, because deep down I knew she was right. Still, when she left that night, I found myself already waiting for the next time. I told myself it was just sex, just passion, just the relief of being wanted. But I knew better. It was more than that. It was a double life, one I didn't want to give up. The affair should have made me feel guilty. In some ways, it did. The quiet moments, the mornings after, when I catch my wife humming while making coffee and wonder how she could be so blind. But more often than not, I felt something else entirely. Alive, desired, powerful in a way I hadn't in years. But shifts always come. No secret stays weightless forever. It began with the way my wife started watching me. Not with suspicion, at first, but with something subtler, harder to define. A tilt of the head when she thought I wasn't listening. A narrowing of her eyes when I smiled at a message on my phone. A pause in her laughter when I seemed distracted. One night, over dinner, she asked suddenly, "Why do you stay up so late these days?" I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. "Just work. Reading. Can't sleep sometimes." She nodded, but her gaze lingered longer than usual, sharp, probing. "You've been different lately." "Different how?" I tried to sound casual. "Hard to say," she said slowly, sipping her wine. "But I noticed things." The words sent a ripple of panic through me. She wasn't accusing, not yet, but she was paying attention in ways she hadn't before, and that alone was dangerous. Meanwhile, her best friend was pushing in the opposite direction. We met in secret, as always. That night it was in her apartment, dimly lit, the curtains drawn tight. We were tangled together on her couch, sweat cooling on our skin, her head resting on my chest. "You can't keep living like this," she murmured. "Like what?" I asked, though I knew. Split in two. Her husband by day, mine by night. She shifted, propping herself on her elbow, so her eyes met mine. "Don't you ever wonder what it would be like if you didn't have to sneak? If you didn't have to hide?" I swallowed hard, my hand brushing along her back. "Of course I do, but it's not that simple." "It is," she insisted. "You deserve better than being mocked at dinner parties and laughed at in front of friends. You deserve to be with someone who actually sees you." Her words hit deep, because they echoed the things I had told myself in the quietest hours of night. But hearing them spoken aloud made them feel heavier, more real. "Don't say that," I whispered, though I pulled her closer as I said it. "Why not? It's the truth." She kissed me then, slow and deliberate, as if sealing her words with her lips. I kissed back, hungry, needing, but when she finally pulled away, I saw in her eyes she wasn't content with stolen hours anymore. She wanted everything. The shift grew sharper. My wife's unease grew with each passing day. "Why do you keep your phone with you all the time now?" she asked once too casually, while folding laundry. I forced a laugh. "Because you keep stealing it to look at my photos." She didn't laugh back. She just folded another shirt and said, "Maybe." The silence after that felt like a blade. That night, when I told her friend about it, she didn't hesitate. She knows something's off. "You can't play this game forever." "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying you'll have to choose eventually. And if you don't, she might choose for you." The words sat heavy in my chest. I wanted to argue, but she was right. The next time the three of us were together, the tension was unbearable. My wife had invited her over for drinks, the way she had countless times before. To her, it was normal. To me, it was a minefield. We sat at the table, wine glasses in hand, laughter forced. My wife told another story, poking fun at me for something small, expecting the usual laugh from her friend. But instead, her friend gave her a tight smile and said, "You always make jokes at his expense. You ever think that maybe it's not funny anymore?" The room went still. My wife blinked, caught off guard, just as she had at the picnic weeks earlier. "I'm just teasing," she said quickly, but her tone was sharper than before. "Maybe," her friend replied evenly, "but sometimes teasing crosses a line." The silence that followed was suffocating. My wife's lips pressed into a thin line, and though she tried to move the conversation along, the atmosphere never recovered. I sat there, heart racing, trying not to look at either of them for too long, because I knew they both felt it now. The shift, the balance of power was changing, and my wife wasn't as blind as she had once been. That night, when I walked her friend to the door, her hand brushed mine, lingering just a moment too long. "She's starting to see it." I whispered. "Let her," she whispered back. "Maybe it's time." When she left, my wife appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "What were you two whispering about?" My pulse thundered. "Nothing," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just saying goodnight." Her gaze lingered, sharp, doubtful. For the first time, I realized the game was no longer safe. The shift had begun, and sooner or later, everything was going to break. Secrets are like cracks in glass. At first, their hairline barely visible, but pressure builds, and suddenly the whole thing shatters. I could feel the pressure mounting every day. My wife's suspicion had sharpened. She started asking little questions that seemed harmless but weren't. "Why are you smiling at your phone? Who are you texting so late? Why are you working so much overtime?" Each time I brushed her off, but the doubt in her eyes lingered longer. Meanwhile, her best friend grew restless. She wanted more. More nights, more stolen moments, more me. What had started as whispers and stolen touches was no longer enough. Every time we met, she pushed further, not just with her body, but with her words. "You can't keep pretending," she told me one night, curled against me in her apartment. "She doesn't love you, not the way I do." "Don't say that," I muttered, though the words lodged deep in my chest. "It's the truth," she pressed, her fingers tracing circles on my skin. "She tears you down, mocks you, and you let her. But when you're with me, you're alive. You know it. I did know it. That was the problem. The breaking point came at a dinner party. Friends gathered around the table, laughter and wine flowing, candles flickering in the dim light. My wife was in her element, telling stories, commanding attention. And then, as she so often did, she turned her humor toward me. "He couldn't even fix the sink last week," she said with a smirk. "Had to call a plumber. Honestly, he's useless with his hands unless it's lifting groceries." Everyone chuckled politely, but I saw her friend stiffen. I felt her eyes on me, sharp, protective. "That's not true," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the laughter. "He fixed my shelves last month. Did a better job than anyone I could have hired." The table went quiet. My wife's head snapped toward her, eyes narrowing. "Oh, when exactly did he have time to do that?" My stomach dropped. The air thickened. Her friend hesitated only a fraction before answering smoothly. "When you were out with your co-workers, I needed help, and he was kind enough to come by, but the damage was done." My wife's gaze lingered on me, suspicion sharpening into something darker. The ride home was unbearable. My wife was silent, her jaw tight, hands gripping the wheel. I stared out the window, my pulse pounding. When we got inside, she turned to me, arms crossed. "Since when do you run errands for her?" "It wasn't a big deal," I said quickly. "She asked and I helped. That's all." Her eyes bored into me. "You've been different lately. Distracted. Secretive. And now I find out you're fixing things for her when I'm not around. Are you accusing me of something?" I shot back, more defensive than I intended. "I don't know," she said slowly, her voice icy. "Should I be?" I froze. For a moment, I thought about confessing everything, ripping the secret out into the open just to end the tension. But cowardice won. "You're imagining things," I muttered, brushing past her. But I could feel her eyes on my back, heavy and unrelenting. That night, my phone buzzed under the sheets. "Her. Is she suspicious?" "Yes," I typed. "She's watching me closer." "Then maybe it's time," she wrote back. "Time for what?" "To stop hiding. To be with me fully." My chest tightened. I stared at the message, knowing it wasn't just fantasy anymore. She meant it. She wanted me to choose. I didn't reply. The next day, my wife confronted me again. She stood in the kitchen, arms folded, staring me down. "Tell me the truth. Is there something going on between you two?" The words hung in the air like a blade. My mouth went dry. My heart raced. I opened it to speak, to deny, to confess. I didn't even know which, but no sound came out. Her eyes filled with something sharp and brittle. She laughed bitterly. "That's all I needed. You can't even say no." She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. The glass had cracked, the pressure finally breaking through. The secret was no longer safe. And as much as I tried to deny it, a part of me felt relief. Because maybe, just maybe, the truth wanted to be free. The house felt colder after her accusation. For days, silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. My wife went about her routines, cooking, cleaning, answering calls. But she didn't look at me the same way. When her eyes did meet mine, they burned with suspicion, with a hurt she tried to disguise as anger. At night, she rolled to the far edge of the bed, leaving a gulf between us. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my phone pressed against my chest, waiting for it to buzz. Waiting for her. And it always did. Her messages became relentless. "Do you still want me?" "She doesn't deserve you." "Leave with me." "Start over." Each word twisted the knife deeper, because I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to. But every time I thought of walking away, I saw my wife's face at that picnic, her smirk, her cruelty, and behind it, the years we'd shared. History doesn't vanish easily, no matter how poisoned it becomes. The breaking point came on a rainy evening. My wife confronted me again, her patience burned to ash. "I asked you before," she said, voice trembling with rage and hurt, "and you couldn't deny it. So tell me now, is there something between you and her?" Her words cracked in the air. I looked at her, at the woman who had once been my dream, the woman who had laughed with me, slept beside me, built a life with me, and also the woman who had humiliated me, who had stripped me down with words, who never once gave me the respect I craved. And then I thought of her best friend, the one who had stepped into the silence, who had seen me, wanted me, touched me like I mattered. I opened my mouth, and the truth spilled out. Yes. The word was quiet, but it was enough. My wife's face went white, then red, then something jagged and broken. "You bastard," she whispered. With her? With my best friend. I didn't move. I didn't deny it. There was no point anymore. Her voice shook as she said, "Get out." I should have begged. I should have pleaded. But instead, I nodded slowly, grabbed my jacket, and left. Her friend was waiting. I hadn't told her what I'd do, hadn't promised anything, but she must have sensed it. When I knocked, she opened the door before I could raise my hand again. "You told her," she whispered. I nodded. My body trembled, from fear, from adrenaline, from the finality of it all. She pulled me inside and held me, her arms tight around me, her lips brushing my ear. "You did the right thing." "Did I?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Yes," she said firmly. "Now you can finally live. With me." That night we didn't rush. We made love slowly, tenderly, as though we were finally allowed to be what we had been pretending not to be for so long. No guilt, no restraint. Just us. And yet, even in the middle of it, even as her body moved against mine, I felt the shadow of something else. Loss. The echo of a life I just burned to the ground. Weeks later, the fallout was brutal. My wife cut me off completely, her anger loud and relentless. Friends took sides. Some looked at me with pity, others with disgust. The whispers followed us everywhere. But through it all, she stayed. The woman who had once been only my wife's best friend became my confidant, my lover, my partner. And sometimes, late at night, she would ask me if I regretted it. I never answered honestly, because the truth is complicated. I don't regret her. I don't regret the fire, the passion, the way she pulled me back to life. But I do regret the wreckage, the broken glass, the friendships lost, the years shattered like they meant nothing. The choice was made. There was no going back. I had left humiliation behind. I had chosen desire, respect, and danger. Whether it was love or just a hunger of two lonely people, I didn't know. But as I lay beside her, her hand warm against my chest, I told myself one thing. At least now I was seen.